Wildlife Rehabilitation and Rescue Center is the treatment and care of injured, orphaned, or sick wild animals so that they can be released back into the wild. The field of wildlife rehabilitation varies from small-scale operations of individuals working from their homes, usually working with a veterinarian, to professionally staffed wildlife hospitals. Rehabilitation of wildlife is an important aspect of modern biodiversity conservation and providing security to wildlife that are being endangered or critically endangered, and is an important aspect of modern day conservation efforts. Many wildlife rehabilitators and centers are also committed to improving the well-being of wildlife through public education, focusing on how humans can safely and peacefully coexist with native wildlife and on wildlife's important to humans and the environment. Wildlife rehabilitation clinics can also offer advice and guidance on human solutions for nuisance wildlife concerns. In many countries, including United States and Australia, wildlife rehabilitation requires a license or permit. In these countries, it is against the law to rehabilitate a wild animal without permits. In the United States, rehabilitation permits requirement and procedures for all animals other than birds vary from one state to another. The number of regulations in place when it comes to wildlife rehabilitation needs to be carefully scrutinized, because one may to make sure that the animal that is being cared and reintroduced into the wild is not an exotic animal, because many exotic wildlife, if introduced into the native ecosystem, may cause significant damage to the ecosystem and threaten the success of the breeding and establishment of wildlife that are pertinent and native to a particular region may get wiped out, or there may be a disease contamination from introduction of exotic animals, or exposing them to intense competition for food and resources from exotic animals being introduced accidentally into native ecosystem. Many states in the United States of America require a license to work as a wildlife rehabilitator. The important services provided by wildlife rehabilitation centers includes a large number of areas that needs to be emphasized, and includes and is not limited to lessening the biologist workload, ensure human and professional care of injured animals, provides great help to professional wildlife handlers to help wildlife rehabilitation centers with wildlife to cope up with emergencies, provides data and staff for areas of wildlife research and retrospective studies, specialized in threat and endangered species recovery, assists in monitoring disease and domestic animal protection and public health, providing self-regulation and self-enforcement within the wildlife rehabilitator community, providing valuable public education and clear understanding regarding the securing of wildlife community and its necessary services. But however, it is quite important to understand that under many circumstances, the wildlife rehabilitation centers that are running without trained professionals working or without any veterinarian and is mostly on an amateurish basis is more of a nuisance and destructive approach rather than a help, because without trained professional dealing with wildlife, it can result in accidents, it can result in the death of the wildlife, or this can also result in attack of the handling persons without training from the wildlife that they have captured. So it is very important that we understand that this is a nodal center of helping wildlife to cope that has been captured from a particular area of an urban or rural locality that needs care, protection, and the necessary monitoring and surveillance before they are released back into the wild, particularly if they are injured or are suffering from any kind of contagious diseases. The process of rehabilitation begins when an animal is found and reported to a wildlife rehabilitator or seized from illegal wildlife trade or a poacher. If anyone finds wildlife in need of rescue, it can be dangerous or even illegal to interact with the animal yourself. Be sure to contact a licensed rehabilitator before taking any necessary action. The rehabilitation center will examine the animal to determine the extent of the injury and the probability of successful rehabilitation. If it appears that the animal can make a sufficient recovery to be able to return to the wild, the animal will be fed, nurtured, and provided safe temporary housing and medically treated as necessary. Animals that cannot be rehabilitated are usually euthanized humanly, although animals are occasionally placed at facilities appropriately licensed for educational exhibit or brought into appropriate lifetime care in wildlife rescue centers. The goal of Wildlife Rehabilitation Center is to safely return the animal back to its home, but it is not always the case. A non-releasable animal may sometimes be kept by the rehabilitator as a surrogate parent for orphaned or injured young wildlife. Preventing imprinting and habituation is important in the rehabilitation process. Imprinting occurs when a young animal, specifically young birds, begin to see their rehabilitator as their primary caregiver. It is possible to reverse this process in most animals, but it is permanent with birds. Rehabilitators have to take caution when caring for young animals in order to avoid this. It is critical to establish maintain boundaries between the rehabilitator and the animal. These includes wearing a mask and gloves around the animals or even covering an animal's cage with a towel to prevent contact with humans. Nonetheless, Wildlife Rehabilitation and Rescue Center plays a very important role in the society and an instrumental tool in modern biodiversity conservation and should be encouraged to continue with proper training and licensing. Shoykot Kumar Basu, Bureau Report, Kalinga Chronicle TV.